The Dig Podcast Series 10, all about real lives, real moments. And we just want to give you, our listener, a heads up that we will be covering some sensitive topics.
We were actually taken off my mum and put into care. And very early on, I knew that my life was going to be very, very difficult. I think part of the stuff that I put myself through, I thought I deserved the punishment for what happened to my brother. For the first couple of years I was doing well and ended up just absolutely partying, flat out, drinking and flat out in cocaine. Yeah, I had this chip on my shoulder to think to myself, actually I've been through all this, I deserve to do what I want. And numerous people came to me and says, you need to take it easy, and I was going, no chance. One, you have to want it, but as a big thing, you have to really want the change in your life. You can't expect somebody to come and change your life because it'll never happen. I'm glad that the content that I can put out, that's who I'm sort of hitting, because I want them young ones to have a role model. I didn't reach out for help for so long, and the only person that hurt was.
Today on the Dig Podcast, I have every guest special, but another special guest, I should say, who's travelled his way here to the beautiful Lochern Resort to be right beside me. So I don't take that for granted because it's been a long journey. But Jason Millar, or as most people know him as Jay, he has joined us today, you, the Dig Podcast listener. And as you know, it's real lives, real moments we're focusing on in this series, because that's life. Everybody has one that affects their working life and life in general and everyone around them. So Jay has agreed to share his story. And look, there's grief, trauma, addiction and so much more, but it's the way he I suppose tells it that actually resonates with people so much. It hit me so much online, and I got down a rabbit hole of looking at all his videos and his motivational stuff and his work, and then his life, got to know about what's happened. So I know that he's going to help so many people on the podcast today. So he has over 200,000 social media followers, and I hope I've got that right. But he's also been named as Best Barber Shop in Northern Ireland. So we're going to link all of that in the show notes, where that is and where you can get a haircut from Jay. But he also has his Barber Academy. He's transforming lives with that as well, through skills and mentoring, really, because I talked to him before we came on and he told me all about that. He's making a huge impact on his community, and he's here with the Dig Podcast listeners today and me to give us some insight into what his life's been like and try to help us if we're going through any of those things. So thank you for being on the Dig Podcast, Jay.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Nice
to see you and finally meet you in person, because you watch people online and you think you know them, and then you meet them, you're like, actually I've never met you before, but I feel like, I know a lot already because you do share online. And before we started to talk, we're trying to figure out what way the conversation's going to go, because actually your story's so vast. We could take each part and do an hour each on it. So I suppose to give people who are listening insight, who are you? Who is Jay? What I suppose, take us back to the early days, just to give a wee bit, I suppose, insight into that.
So back in the early days of obviously growing up, I was from Rathcoole Estate in Newtonabbey, and the early years of my life wasn't very easy. I was growing up with my mum, she was an alcoholic and stuff. My younger brother, we were actually taken off my mum and put into care. And very early on, I knew that my life was going to be very, very difficult. Growing up with, obviously, in and out of different children's homes and stuff, and care homes and stuff, and it was just up and down so much. And you don't realise till you get older how much impact it has in your life, because I thought to myself I would have been all right from going through it all, but going through all them, obviously, care homes and stuff, we were actually placed in a children's home, and we ran away from home one night, and my brother was actually knocked down and killed in front of me. As a child I was 8 at the time, and then even after that, the social worker says that they couldn't understand why I was so settled 2 weeks after that had all happened. And then after the 2 weeks, I just went obviously off the rails and stuff.
Whenever you, sorry for jumping in, but when, like, life in a care home, like, there'd be people listening that have people in their families, perhaps extended families, where that's actually maybe a reality for them now. Back then, what was life like? Do you have memories of what it was like to be there? Like, because many of us will never know what a life would be like in a care home.
I think the big thing for me from being in the home was, I remember being in school and kids all talking about their mummy and daddy taking them swimming, and even from now, I'm 42 now, but thinking back, all the wee things of mummies and daddies taking their kids to swimming or doing different things, I always remember stuff like that being in the home and not being taken nowhere or just being left in the home. I'm not saying all of it was bad in the home, because I was run about the home going nuts, and I knew you could get away with it. But back in them early days, like, being in a home you're so isolated from everything else. Like, I can't remember going to the dentist or going to get my hair cut, and all the different things that kids would probably remember cherishing, going with their mum and dad, fun parks, or going to different places, swimming or whatever. But in children's homes, it was very, very isolated, and even the food and all, it was very like regimented and like military style. Like, you'd be down at certain times to get your dinner, and if you weren't there, you didn't get fed. So all these small things that would definitely remind you of being in the home.
And your brother, so he's had a big impact in your whole life right up to now, but you were so close then, and Wayne was his name. What was he like?
Me and him were really, really close, and just always like with brothers, getting up to mischief and stuff. But the night that he was actually knocked down, he wasn't even meant to go with us. He was standing at the top of the home and was like calling my name, and I was like, just stay there. And it's actually crazy, the mirrors that's in my shop now, the actual mirror was a gate. It's the gates off the home, and I got the gates. That's a gate we run out the night he was killed. So I'm actually standing in my work all these 35, 40 years later, cutting hair in this shop, and it's the actual gate that we run out the night he was killed, and you're going like, what's it all about?
But you'd made a choice to have that gate there for a reason, obviously.
That's it. I know some people would say, like, that's a bit morbid, and does that not annoy you and all? But I think when you've been through so much trauma and stuff, and you accept it for what it is, and obviously, as you said, you make a decision about it. It's actually, I believe it's a good thing.
And what happened then? Like, he obviously followed you then? So
we actually went from Ralphfern to Carrick, got on a train, and thinking back, we're only wee bobbies, like, and we actually, there was 8 or 9 of us went, and one of the older people, of the older kids, actually rang the home, and out of everybody was shouting, we're here, we're there. Out of all of us, Wayne was the only one that shouted out, we're in Carrick, and one of the big boys was going to hit him for shouting Carrick. So then we made our way across this gravel pitch of a school at the back until the front, and jumped over the fence, and then that's when I heard the bang about that. Obviously Wayne had been knocked down. Some girl had been screaming that Wayne's been knocked down, but I knew as soon as I seen him, like, he's in a bad way. And
then what unfolded after for you? Like, you obviously hadn't got your mum in your life anymore, and now not your closest like partner in crime as such.
I think the hardest thing for me was before my mum had died. She was very, very hard on me anyway, but she told me before she died, make sure you look after Wayne. So whenever he died, for so many years in my life, I blame myself, because obviously letting him come that night and obviously not looking after him and him getting killed and stuff. And obviously I was a child myself, so it took me a long time to actually accept that it wasn't my fault that he died. But even from then till now, I've never had one piece of counselling or anything about that, for obviously all the trauma that I was through.
But then things started to unfold later on that perhaps was maybe a deep-rooted reason, and we'll talk about that. So what did life look like without him then, moving forward at that time?
I think a deep thing, like a deep sense of shock of not obviously him being there anymore, and took me a long time to even accept that he'd actually passed away. Going from the home, I actually got fostered by my uncle Victor and Janet. They took me in and looked after me and helped me, sort of give me a bit of discipline in my life, but I probably needed structure where I never had it before. And then going from there, I actually joined the army, and I was working in the army for a while. And then a good friend of mine actually shot himself on the phone. He was going through a bit of a hard time in the army, and even when that happened, I was like, I can't even believe it.
While you were on the phone to him?
He was on the phone to his mother, but
okay.
He was a good friend. I actually cut his hair. It was the first time I ever cut hair when we were in the army, and that was I remember cutting his hair in the wet room, and I couldn't, because he's one of the hardest. Like, he wouldn't mess with anybody. And the thing about it was, whenever I heard that, I was like, I can't even believe, because I think it was because of how bad it, and how destructive it was. What a way to die, and be on the phone and tell your daddy. He used to on the phone to his father, tell my mum I love her, and just a lot of destruction. You're going like, so much trauma for obviously me as knowing him as a friend, but his family to go through as well, because so just devastation. And
so your uncle and your aunt, embraced you into their home, and then then how did life, like then you're going into your teenage years, which are obviously, you know, traumatic at the best of times, but you had a lot going on there.
I think in the end years of my life, looking back, I definitely went into sort of a quit. Like, don't get me wrong, there's different things that happened, like fighting with my cousin Brian and stuff, and taking a lot of anger out on him, and obviously fighting with people and stuff. But then I just was like very, very quiet for a number of years, and then even when I was in the army too, it took me a long time to sort of find myself again. And then, as I said, I was cutting Paul's hair and stuff, and then I always wanted to be a barber, but I was always scared just to make that step. It took me about 5 years to do it, and I was doing haircuts without getting trained, and I went to Tar Street and get trained up as a barber and stuff. And I thought to myself that I was doing really well, charging people, doing really good haircuts and stuff, and applied for a job in Jason Shanky's, which is a really, really high-end barbershop in Ballyhackamore in Belfast. And I remember going in to do like a trade test, done the trade test and came out, and I said to myself, oh, I've definitely got the job. And they sent me an email saying, sorry, you're not good enough. So they actually sent me an email back a few weeks later saying if I was willing to come up and speak to the owner, that just got an offer for me. And they said if I was willing to work for free, that they'll train me. So I obviously says yes, worked there for 7 months for free, and ended up the manager for them for House of Fraser. And then that's when everything just sort of took off for my barbering career and stuff.
The Dig podcast means so much to us because we're able to help people with actionable advice, both in the world of work and life. And so many people are listening, thousands of downloads, but some people still haven't hit that follow button or subscribe. I'm guilty of it too. I listen to podcasts and I actually haven't taken that action. But I'm asking you today, if you do love the podcast and you want to keep seeing more guests, if you could hit follow on Spotify or Apple, or if you watch on YouTube, if you hit that subscribe button, it helps the podcast grow. And in turn, I can continue to have brilliant guests that bring you great advice each week. And what happened then when you say it took off? What was that? What
taking off? I mean, like really doing well for myself. People being very successful. A lot of people like wanting you to cut their hairs and doing all sorts of celebrities and stuff. Cut 30 Seconds to Mars' hair in the MTV Awards, and just everything just went. It was the way I was wanting to go and stuff. And then I actually ended up leaving Shanky's and opened my own shop, which went amazing, 2012, and very, very quickly learned. For the first couple of years I was doing well, and ended up just absolutely partying, flat out, drinking, and flat out in cocaine. And my personality, I learned a lot about myself because of obviously what I went through. I had this chip on my shoulder to think to myself, oh, sure, I've been through all this, I deserve to do what I want. And numerous people came to me and says, you need to take it easy, and I was going, no chance. And I just kept just partying and drinking and taking care, and little by little nearly lost my wife and my kids, and the shop fell away, and it just was completely lost with drinking drugs, and I told myself for 5 years that's me, I'm done with it, I'm just completely done with the drinking drugs and all. I still couldn't get away from it, and I ended up doing an alpha course in church. One of my friends, Ricky, I met him just by chance, and he said to me about doing this alpha course, and I was actually going to do adverts outside my shop mocking Christians, because just I was doing all this guerrilla marketing. I had a picture of Kim Young saying don't have a bad hair day, and I was going to do this like advertisement about Christians or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was to do with mocking Christians, and then lo and behold I ended up a Christian myself, obviously.
And so that friend obviously wanted to intervene to help you, and is that what that was?
I think when he seen me, he knew that I was a bit lost, and he said to me about doing this alpha course, which is
What is it, a course? What is that?
So alpha course is a 12-week course that you go and learn about God and how to pray and how to receive the Holy Spirit and stuff. And I remember going up the first night and going, this is never going to work for me because I know how headstrong I am.
But you went though?
And I went, and I remember going in the first night, and I seen my auntie and all there that I hadn't seen in years, and I walked in and I'm going, I can't believe this is happening. And I stayed and done the course and ended up getting saved at the end of it. And I think people think when you ever get saved, your life's over and everything else. And my life just started getting better again when I got saved. And
Can I stop you there, right? So obviously ignorance on my behalf too, but for people who are listening, what does that mean to be saved? What does that mean?
So to be saved, it means that you give your life to Jesus and God, and you accept that the life that you were living wasn't the way you should be living. You turn your life completely around the opposite way, and you repent of what you've obviously been through, and you continue to obviously lead a life that you're obviously not living in sin, which is very, very hard, because at the end of the day, life's not easy. We're surrounded by sin, even people on their phones and stuff. So being a Christian is not easy, and obviously me turning my life around, you have a continuous daily struggle of being a Christian, because obviously being on social media and all too, and people obviously, they know that you're a Christian, and it's hard living a life that people, especially when the life that people's living is just full of destruction and just hopelessness.
And so, like, we had a lady here yesterday on the podcast, and she shared her story of alcoholism and how she got support through Alcoholics Anonymous, and they helped her. And everyone, if they can, finds a way. So this was your way of getting that support at the start, and now it's led into a new way of life. It's fascinating to hear that, but that was a community for you of people as well that were supporting you through, isn't that right?
Yeah.
So finding your, like, I'm just trying to think of a message for people who are listening that maybe that's not the path they want to try, or maybe it is, but having people around you that support you is so important.
Yeah, I think having the right people around you is a big, big thing, because if you're around the wrong sort of people, and people's not stupid, you know who's not for you and who's and everything else, and if you're in the wrong circles of people, whatever they're doing or saying, or even the way that the language that they're speaking, or whatever they're doing, you know that they're not there to benefit you. But the many people that I was bothering with and partying with and everything else, there's not one single person that I was drinking or partying with, or what I was buying drugs, or there's not a lemons that's in my life now that there was before. Not that I'm any better than them, because I'm not, but what I'm saying is the life that I'm living now is very, very small circles, and it's good when you're out there partying, and for people that's all around you pretending they're your friends, but whenever the money dries up or whatever else, they're nowhere to be seen. But the thing about it is, I always wanted better for myself, and I was always a good person that wanted to help other people. And I think with the courses and the barber and everything else, and how much of I give away, where it's my time, or I do stuff for other people, or I do the palliative care and cancer wards, or cutting children's wards. Anything that I'm doing it because it's not just to me just to be feeling good about myself. I genuinely have a good heart to help people. And
when, I suppose for people who are listening, there's a lot of people going through a lot of different things. When is rock bottom? How do you know when you're at rock bottom? Are you able to...
The personality that I've had, I've put myself in rock bottom. I'm not even messing about, and if my wife was here, she would tell you. I've been at rock bottom hundreds and hundreds of times, and I still continue to put myself through unnecessary stuff that I, even in my past, and she used to plead with me and cry and say, like, why you put yourself through this? And I think in the mind that I'm in now, and the headspace, it's because I think part of the stuff that I put myself through, I thought I deserved the punishment for what happened to my brother and so many things, and I continue just to keep putting myself through it and put through it, where now I know it's not acceptable to put myself through it, or my wife or my kids, because at the end of the day, I should be wanting better for them, never mind myself, do you know what I mean? Because there's always a bigger picture than just me just obviously drinking or partying, or obviously taking drugs or whatever. And I try and be in my shop, speak to people. There's so many people that come into my shop, women, men, the age of people that's drinking and taking drugs it's so scary. And how young ones are taking the ketamine and taking all these different sort of drugs, and you're going, you just don't even understand how strong this stuff is, never mind coming off it. So it's alright if you take it, do you know what I mean? Even trying to come off it, withdrawals is so bad, do you know what I mean? You think that you're literally down inside your skin, do you know what I mean? And these people that's taking these drugs, they don't even know the impact that they're in their life. So
you are not on a mission, but it is kind of part of your path now, where you help educate other people through, I suppose, like we talked about. Do you want to tell people what you're doing with your barbering courses? Well, with the courses that I'm offering now, it's been a work in progress. I'm teaching now about 11, 12 years, and what we're doing now, and this is what I've always aimed to try and do, and to get to the sort of level where you can offer the government services that's people that's struggling, that's maybe on the sick, and that's what we're doing now, like day courses for people that's wanting to have life skills to do, whether it be confidence or people skills or whatever, and coming on a day course at Jay's and learning that there's more to life than just, not that there's anything wrong with sitting on the sick or whatever, but at the end of the day, they know that they want to be there, and doing a lot of stuff with the homeless. So when I'm teaching my students the barbering, I teach them the skills that they need
to do a basic cut. Then I bring them down to the homeless shelter on a Wednesday. So I started that by myself, and now there's between 7 and 10 people every Wednesday down at the homeless shelter in Hope Church, Chapel Lane with Brian Madden, and we're down there giving cuts to people. It's like their lives are just upside down. And at the end of the day, just because they're there doesn't mean that just giving them a haircut or having a chat with people, it's giving them a really good service, even to have a chat, because at the end of the day, everybody's life, yes, it might be going well, but everything can turn very, very quickly that you maybe didn't anticipate. And
we talked about how you are teaching people how to barber and cut hair. Is that the right way to say it? How to teach people how to barber? Is that
I like barbering skills, yeah.
Barbering skills.
Yeah.
But with that comes not a need, but a want of mentoring from you. So, that's part of it. It's not just about the skill, it's about you trying to guide them as well.
Well, when they go on the course, the first 4 weeks, I try and get them to stand in front of them and speak to clients and do consultations, 5-second rule, and all the different things that I think it's going to help them.
What's the 5-second rule? Let us in.
So 5-second rule is when somebody comes through the door, you have between 5 and 10 seconds to meet and greet somebody. And I teach the students that they just know that when people come through the door, the first 5 seconds, people's making their mind up actually whether they like you or not. So say for talk's sake, you don't make a dash for the door to say, welcome to Jay's, come on ahead. Then people's actually, like when you go into a shopping centre or wherever and somebody doesn't sort of greet you, what way do you feel? So I always put it back on them to make them feel like they want to be giving somebody a good service. And if I can teach them confidence and customer service, it means that they'll have confidence. Like the first couple of nights they'll do consultations in front of everybody, and that's maybe in front of 10 or 12 people, and all of a sudden you're gowning some client up and asking them what they want and how do you find product knowledge and how you finding styling your hair in the morning, and all of a sudden they've never done this before. They're looking down the mirror, having eye contact with somebody but they're not used to, and learning them all sorts of skills and then you start to build their confidence and see week by week. You can see these people, all ages. I mean, people we have trained as young as 13 and the oldest was like 60, and these people are coming in and they've such a want to do well for themselves, and when they're doing the course then they get this stage where they're going, right Jay, what else can I do? And you bring them in, you do the homeless, and then they're doing stuff like that, and then you bring them to care homes, or else you can bring them up to palliative care, and all of a sudden they're going, like, people's actually want me to do this service and everything else, and that's what means more to me now, because there's so much you can change somebody's life just by giving them the skills to teach somebody to cut hair. It's like the thing in the Bible, it teaches somebody, like feed them with a fish or teach them how to fish, and that's exactly what I'm doing now, and it's much more than barbering. It's being used as in my opinion, I'm being used as a vessel to help all these people. It's like lost and a lot of need.
We're just taking a short little break in the Dig podcast to shine a light on our fantastic partner, Linwoods Health Foods.
Small changes every day make the biggest difference to our health. Linwood's milled organic flaxseed blends are high in omega-3, which helps maintain normal cholesterol levels. But that's not all. These little seeds are also bursting with fibre, protein and other essential nutrients to keep you feeling your best. Simply add 2 dessert spoonfuls to your breakfast every day. Linwoods is available in all major supermarkets, health food stores and online at linwoodshealthfoods.com. Make a better start every day with Linwoods, proud sponsors of the Dig podcast.
And now back to our guest. And we actually spoke to another guest this morning who talked about building people's confidence and how that helps change their lives. So that's kind of what you're talking about there too. You might be teaching the skills, but actually it's affecting them like a ripple effect.
Oh, aye, big time. And then when they go home, or else I say to them week in, week out, like when they bring their loved ones in to do these courses, they're going to be seeing flip. They're actually taking a CS. They're very, very professional, and they're learning cut by cut. I'm not saying everybody who walks through the door is going to make it, because I tell them all on the first night when I do the intro that this isn't easy. Just because you're paying to be on a course doesn't mean that you're going to be like joining the army. You're not a soldier until you actually do the training, or you're not a good driver and get your driving licence till you get more confidence and everything else. And I think being straight with them from the get-go and everything else, and I have a good team behind me too, where the people and the instructors that's helping them, we're very, very, like there's 4 instructors on every class. I started that by myself, and even to see all that going well and helping people, like with the homeless, we've done courses with the homeless to teach the homeless how to cut hair, but it's very, very technical too, because you're dealing with people with addiction and stuff. But it's a work in progress, and it's week by week and month by month that the thing's getting stronger and helping so much people.
Because I've seen some of the videos where you go out on the streets and speak to people who that's their home on the side of the road or in a cardboard box. Emotionally, it's hard to, not hard to watch, but I mean, it's emotional to watch. How does that affect you then when you go home to your family life? Is it hard to detach from that?
I think because I've been through so much, I wouldn't say like I'm completely to it or numb to it, but I think I see the struggles that they have, and when I go and cut their hairs, like I have so much in depth, like speaking and talking to them, I'm like try and help them as much as I can. As they're not trapped in addiction, I would always give them money. But if they are, I wouldn't give them money because I know how hard and where that leads to. And there's some nights we're out till 11 o'clock at night doing these filming. And there's so many people like in Belfast. And like in Belfast, it's not that big a place, but it's from I started, I done my first homeless haircut on Christmas Day in 2011. And from then till now, the difference is absolutely, it's scary. And
what is the difference? You mean more people on the street?
Far more people on the street, far more drugs. Like there's so many young girls in Belfast that's doing like serious things for drugs and everything else, and it's just a scary place. I think people they're quick to turn a blind eye to it, but at the end of the day, the reason why I push through these videos, I do them after work. I don't just set a day to go and film and do homeless. I'm standing at work all day and then we go out and do this. Is to raise awareness of obviously how bad it is and how lost these people are, and try and give other people maybe a nudge to try and help other people, because it's I think that's a pandemic in itself.
How can we help? So there's people listening where people in their family have addiction, and what advice would you give to people to help firsthand with when someone's experiencing that? Like your friend came and invited you into a new community. What can we do for people who are going through this, Jay?
There is a big want for it. Like there's different organisations like Hope Church Chapel Lane, the Welcome Centre, and just even if people wanted to get in touch and obviously donate, I don't know, clothes or food, or I don't know if they wanted to, I've done a Just Give page there myself, and I don't really like going on social media and asking for money because that's not what I'm all about, but I did do it because Pastor Brian and a couple of other ones from Hope Church told me that they're actually struggling how to pay to get money to feed these for the homeless in Belfast. So we've done a Just Give page, and within a couple of weeks we've got, I think it was like 1,600. So I don't even get that money gets transferred over, because I wouldn't be wanting to do and they have many deals with the money because it's just safer that way for everybody. But I think there's so much that people can do, whether it be obviously you can volunteer, or else if you just wanted to contact like Hope Church Chapel Lane or any of the welcome centres in Belfast, and they could take a donation, or else even ask them, do you want to come in and work in the soup kitchens where you can feed these people.
And what about though if there's somebody in your family and you don't know how to help them? How do you start that cycle of healing or getting people to realise, or when do you ever realise? Do you only realise when you're on the street, or what? That's
a really good question. I think a lot of people think like myself, like for 5 years I thought to myself that it was alright, and it wasn't. So I think getting advice, like me and Brian Madden done a video there about like different organisations that the people can go and get on courses, like a Teen Challenge, do 11-month course where, say for toxic somebody's trapped in addiction, they'll go over to England and they do the 11 months with Teen Challenge. You're not allowed to smoke, you're not allowed to leave the place, and you learn all about God while you're there, and obviously hopefully get saved. But I think for a lot of people, it's one, you have to want it. Is a big thing. You have to really want the change in your life. You can't expect somebody to come and change your life, because it will never happen. And I think with me and having the sort of knowledge and the just a thing in my head where I wanted to have a change in my life, like, and obviously getting right with God and stuff helped me. But a lot of people doesn't even realise, before I got saved, I used to write on bits of paper, like A4 bits of paper, that I was asking God to help me. Like even though I was still trapped in addiction, I used to write all these things on thanking God for my life, and please change my life, and please help me be a better husband or be a better father to my kids. And I read all this stuff down before I get saved, and I used to leave it, and I left this on my windowsill all the time, and I used to plead with him. I was crying, I was broken on the floor. It wasn't just about boom, I'd done this course and that was me fixed. There's a whole, especially because I'm so headstrong and so stubborn, that it was just a whole process of to get saved and getting right with God, and even the works of myself. And I think if I could give anybody advice on, it's knowing that you need help and wanting to change. Don't be ever expecting somebody to wrap your door and go, right, I'm going to help you, because it's not going to work that way. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing, I think, why so many people get trapped in addiction, because one, I blame myself, and I felt so much pity for myself for so long, and that didn't do me any favours. A lot of people isn't ready to hear it, because they want people to go, like, they've been mummied by their mummy or their daddy, and they're wanting lemons, or they put the blame on the lemons, where I was hardened from I was younger. But I think with me, I felt a lot of pity for myself, and played that part in my life, where because I was through so much trauma in my life that, you've been through all this, who's anybody else to tell you what you can do and you can't do? But realistically, like, if I had made the decisions in my head where, listen, this trouble's coming from me and I need help, then I could have done it a lot quicker.
I know, but you did do it, and that's what matters. And you've got 6 kids, you were telling me.
Yep, so 4 boys and 2 girls.
And your hopes for them for the future, like, obviously we're all trying to protect our kids from the dangers in the world, but they're there. Yep. We need to educate them, right, about how to get through that. So when it's a trauma, you've got kids right up to, from, wasn't it 22 down to 3?
Yep.
So they're all going through different wee challenges, as are loads of people who are listening and have their children. So teenagers growing up now, you know, so hard to steer them. Like, what have you any advice on things that you do to try to navigate what they want to, like, it's only, I suppose, it's that curiosity in children as well. They want to try these things and do different things, but how can we keep them on the right path? I know your faith is obviously so important, but is there anything practical that you do with your children to keep them?
I think a lot of kids, unfortunate for them, with social media and flicking on social media, just trying to make sure that my younger kids aren't on social media as much, or on like TikTok reels or YouTube reels, is a big factor. And even their dad too, I think, is trying to keep as little sugar in their dad as possible, because it can make them their concentration and stuff. And it's so hard, because obviously we're all surrounded by so much. You go into the garages now and everything's just all sugar. So it's just trying to keep their intake of sugar as low as possible, for their concentration and stuff too. But the life that they're going to grow up in, and the life that we grew up in, is completely different. A lot of people, social media, that they're sitting watching, and in an hour that they watch, our grandparents will see the traumatic in 30 years that they're going to be going through. So it's trying to keep the phones out of their hands, and obviously just trying to be there for them as much as possible.
How do you keep the phones out of their hands?
Hide the chargers.
Hide the chargers. That's a good tip.
And then when their behaviour obviously gets better, then take it out of the boot of the car. But I think it's just so sad. It's so worrying for the kids, because they think that they're not doing anything wrong, or they're just being conditioned to hear, be quiet, take that phone or take that iPad. But what you're feeding them kids is very rubbish in, rubbish out. So you have to be very careful what we're feeding them, because later on in life I'll be like, well, will you give me this? So it'll be through back in their faces.
No, it is a different world, isn't it? It's like you said, I'm the same age as you, and we never had that.
No.
And like you said, we never would have seen like even a touch of the things that our children are consuming.
I know.
And sometimes it's out of your control in loads of different ways, but if we can be more mindful about it, you know, it's scary.
Even when we were younger, you'd have been sent out to play until it got dark. That's how you knew when to go home. It was dark to get your dinner, and now it's like, kids wouldn't think twice about sitting for 2 or 3 hours, just sitting flicking and flicking and flicking. And then what happens is the stuff that they're watching, stuff be through them where obviously you don't see, but it's just very worrying for them.
I know, and it's the way of the world now. I know it's digital, and me and you're part of that world because we're online creating content. So I suppose it's about what we allow them to see, like monitoring it more.
Yeah.
And making sure they're not watching the wrong things, because it can be very helpful and educational and inspiring. Like watching you inspires other people, and that we can't deny the positive impact it has. Yeah,
some of the ones I would see now, and I'm really grateful for this. If I'm on social media, a lot of young boys they would see me and they'll ask me for pictures and all, and I'm glad that the content that I can put out, that's who I'm sort of hitting, because I want them young ones to have a role model. And at the end of the day, when I was growing up, I was probably searching for a role model and never really got a significant one that I thought, this is who I want to be like. And if them young ones can look at me and have these positive and seeing the good that I can do, then it's what's the really thing it's winning for me.
That's such a good way to look at it, and I suppose that opening up that conversation with the kids too, and not just saying you can't have your phone, explaining all the reasons why. And looking back, you talked about a role model or mentor. Has there been any kind of person in your life from the very start that has been that constant force of good and has kept you like a person you would turn to? Is there someone you would talk about?
Over the years, I've met so many different people. Somebody that I've always looked to over even before I met him was Martin Rogan, is a boxer. I actually cut his hair now and see some of the stuff that he's been through and he talks about in his podcasts and different things. And it's somebody to have such a big name and how grounded he is and how the information he puts out to actually help people with just going through depression and stuff. And for a role model, and I've never actually told him this, but he's always somebody that I've looked to and went, flip, I'd love to be more like him and less like myself, because he's always gives sound advice, and he's always giving out the proper, even if you don't want to hear it, he's the one that will give you the proper advice. And I don't think there's enough people on social media that's willing to stand up and go, listen, if you're going through a hard time, that like he's a heavyweight champion, and he fought Tyson Fury, and he's been on all sorts of talk shows and on TV and stuff. And I think if there was more people like Martin Rogan, the place would definitely be a better place. But
what's a piece of advice that sticks to you that he says? Is there one thing?
There's the thing about he stood up and he says about him going through hardship and him going through a bit of mental health and stuff. And I was going to myself, like, for somebody such a big strong man and like a warrior to get into a ring and fight heavyweight and be through so much, and everything, the way he talks about how hard and going through and coming away and keeping himself away from everybody, and just to hear him talking like that, it's like, it would give me so much hope if I was struggling, do you know what I mean? And I know that we're surrounded by people that's just completely in a really bad place, and I am very, very aware, and even I'm always very cautious of what I put out, of not that I'm living this brilliant life and I'm doing all right, but I'll be very, very careful about what I put out, because I know that the person on the receiving end of that phone is probably sitting somewhere that's not having a good time, and just to try and lift them up a wee bit. And with Martin and stuff, he's always been there and spoken on like podcasts and stuff and talked about his mental health, where a lot of people they'll always shy away from it.
Yeah, and especially within men and the male community, sometimes it's hard to get that spokesperson about mental health as well. But I know people are becoming more vocal, but I must follow his journey. I've boxing brothers into boxing, so I have heard his name, but I actually didn't know that about his journey. So yeah. I must start following him. Thank you for that inspiration to do that. Is there any other message for people who are listening that may have, like, you've went through grief? You lost your mum, your brother, your youth, I suppose, in some respect, and then addiction and everything that came along with that. Is there any other key message that maybe I didn't cover today that you would like people to know if they have any of those things in their lives?
I think, looking back, and obviously I've got that point in my life where I think you have to really want to, obviously when you go through so much grief, try not to let it weigh you down. I know that's easy for me to say out of my mouth without obviously people sitting there, maybe a partner or somebody's passed away in their life. But if you try and have positive things in your life, positive people, and go to the gym and try and drink plenty of water and less sugar, it'll definitely help your life. But there's so much conditioning and social media, and if you're sitting flicking through social media every day, I promise you now you'll not be happy. I'm not on social media myself. I have people running for me. Yes, I record videos and I put them out, but I will not sit in TikTok or any social media and sit and flick through it, because it'll make you miserable, and stuff obviously like that I've been through. Definitely, if you've been through or you're continuing to go through trauma or anything, reach out and get help, because I didn't reach out for help for so long, and the only person that hurt was myself. Well, it was me thinking I was too proud or my ego or whatever, but I think if I had reached out many years ago, I don't know, I probably would have been in a better place. I wouldn't have put myself through as much pain. But the good thing about it is every day's a new day, and it's up to us whether we continue to obviously go through it or let it go and just move on.
I know, it's so true. That's really interesting for you to say that you're not on social media, but you use it as a tool to create a positive kind of place for people to come. So, you know, lots of people shy away from social because they maybe think of all the bad things, but how powerful for you to be able to use it to actually help other people, but not let it consume you either, because it is a fine line.
That's it, no, and at the end of the day, it can definitely eat you up, and if you're willing to, you can nearly be sucked into this whole world of thinking that you have to outdo you, or people are going to try and outdo you. Then all of a sudden, if you're sitting going through all the comments and stuff, that's not good either. Like, I don't read any comments, and I never go through any of the comments, and I never sit and read the comments on social media, or none of my social media guys go through it. It's made, it's pumped out, and if people reach out and it's positive, then it'll be replied to and stuff, and we can help many people. But be very, very careful what you're putting into your ears, because it'll have a long-term effect on you.
All right, and that's a really good advice about not reading the comments, because they can throw you off your plan for helping. And for a long period of time at the start, when I started really, really taking off, I was going to myself, like, why would you even go on? But what I've came to realise is these people that's writing these comments, they're not in a good place themselves, so you can't really judge them, do you know what I mean? And as a Christian myself, it's hard for me to say you have to forgive somebody, but it's all good forgiving somebody until you have to actually forgive. And that's what's been a big part of my life, forgiving myself and forgiving many people. But these people that write so much bad and negative and such bad things, I just don't even read it anymore, because not even for me, other people, if there's been negative stuff that's read on Belfast Live or any stories or stuff, you just have to really, really feel sorry for people, because they're not even in the right place themselves to be writing stuff like that, because you couldn't be to be a loving, like, calm human being, that rather than giving somebody a hard time. No, so true, and we just have to remind ourselves that every day, otherwise we get sucked into the negativity as well. Thank you so much for being on the Dig podcast. Like you said, we just skimmed over the surface, but people who want to find out more and follow your journey, and perhaps there's someone listening and they have a young person in their life that could benefit from having a role model like you, which they absolutely could. How can they find out more? Where do they follow online, or where do they reach out to you, or how do they? So we actually have a website, jaysbarberclub.com, and I've actually read a book about all my stuff, about being trapped in addiction and getting help and stuff. So I have my own book, Jason the Jay, and it's sold 1,000 copies. And we're just in the midst of making a film out of it, so that's going to be good, and a play in the Grand Opera House. So my book's being made into a play and making a film, so I'm grateful about that as well. So if anybody wants to reach out, it'll be Jay's Barber Club on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. And is there any places of support then? You mentioned a few, like Hope Kitchen, and is there any other organisations that we could put in the show notes for people that could help them? Yeah, Teen Challenge would be a very good one. That's one I've been working with all since I've been on my journey. Teen Challenge Belfast. Okay. And also we're going to maybe link in Simon Community and other charities that would support people who are perhaps on that journey of needing that support in those areas. Thank you for being on the Dig podcast. I follow you, so I know there's bad things on social, and we need to be mindful, but it's been a force of positivity for me in getting to meet and connect with people like you, and for you to say yes to be on the Dig podcast. Like, that's a story that is a privilege to hear, even though it's very traumatic. And it just shows that there are real lives, real moments, but people like you sharing it. It'll have so many. Thank you for being on the Dig podcast. Maybe you'll come back again and tell us all the exciting things you're doing in another series. But for now, thank you for being our guest. Thanks very much.